A Failed Mission to Byzantium by D.W. Draffin. Imagine, if you will, that you are one of the great diplomats of medieval Europe. The Holy Roman Emperor Otto himself has chosen you to be his emissary to the court of the Byzantine Emperor, and has charged you to conduct the delicate negotiations of wedding Otto's son to one of their highborn daughters. You are Liutprand, Bishop of Cremona, and this will be your second mission to Constantinople. Your first visit, it was so fine and congenial. You made such strong connections with the remarkable people of the court and city. You are perhaps even eager to return. Yet this is no longer the Byzantine court of Constantine VII Porphyrogenitus, and that is bad news for you. Liutprand's old friend died in the year 959, perhaps poisoned by his son and daughter-in-law, which was not uncommon in that contentious and violent court. Instead of the scholarly emperor of the East you knew and loved, the throne is now occupied by Nicephorus, a former military governor, an ascetic, and a forceful leader of men. And let's face it, Liutprand, you are anything but that. The remarkable text you send back to the court of Emperor Otto in Rome that describes the failure of your mission appears to be equal parts justified complaint, baseless accusation, character assassination, bureaucratic blame avoidance, and travel hit piece. Few texts that survived the next 1,200 years reveal such a personal point of view, ignited as it is by such outrage at the disrespectful treatment you endure there. What follows must be, at least in part, fiction. I cannot imagine what kind of macabre Byzantine punishment would have been performed on you, Liutprand, if you had actually spoken to Nicephorus in the way you say you do in these pages. You might have been blinded, poisoned, had your tongue pulled out or your hands chopped off, or all of the above. And the speeches I assume you invented for the Greek emperor, as you call him, don't sound at all realistic. No ruler would allow a diplomat he detested to lecture him like this. Why, in your own words, the envoys of the Pope were treated far worse than you were for far more minor transgressions. The concept of diplomatic immunity appears to be an advance that hasn't quite caught on in Constantinople yet. You survived at the pleasure of this Greek emperor. In short, yours is the report of a man who failed in achieving any of your official goals, who never established a working rapport with any of the court, most likely because of Otto's activities of supplanting Nicephorus as the titular head of the Holy Roman Empire with his recent seizure of Rome, and who then spent the remainder of the disastrous trip figuring out ways to cover his ass. In that way, your report feels quite modern. To make better sense of it, a brief rundown of the other major figures mentioned in the text might help keep these matters straight. Otto the Great, the Holy Roman Emperor who began as the king of East Francia and Saxony. He was considered the defender of Christendom after his defeat of the Magyars at the Battle of Lechfeld in 955. After that, he began a program of uniting certain duchies and kingdoms of Western and Central Europe into a cohesive whole. Delivering a submissive Italy into the hands of Pope John XII in Rome, he was crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 962. Otto II. During the time of Liutprand's embassy, the future king is the most eligible young bachelor in the Holy Roman Empire. And in order to strengthen the strained relations with the Eastern Byzantines, Emperor Otto proposes to wed young Otto to one of their princesses. But instead they eventually get Theophano from the household of John I Tzimiskes, a former emperor who had won the throne through assassination. Despite the doubts cast on her because of her origins, Theophanu will be crowned empress in Rome and regent for her son when her husband Otto II dies, becoming one of the most powerful women of the age. Berengar and Adalbert are the father and son kings of Italy, referred herein as the lords of Capua and Benevento, whom Otto defeated in 951 and kept as figureheads in his empire. They had formerly been allies of Nicephorus, and his loss of influence over them is the main source of conflict between the two emperors. Leo Phocas, chief minister of the palace in Constantinople, is the younger brother of Nicephorus and a great general in his own right. Scene set. But how to introduce it? So then came the challenge of trying to encapsulate all this into a snappy 3-word YouTube title. In fact, Liutprand's epistolary takedown was so hilariously extreme and infamous that when I queried an AI chatbot about it, this was its response. As a narrator and character actor, there was no way to present this report in a dry and academic manner, for there is nothing dry about Liutprand's words. Byzantine scholars have long been familiar with the writings of Liutprand, but for the rest of us, here is his endlessly scathing and detailed takedown of Nicephorus and his court. Buckle up. Liutprand, Bishop of the Holy Church of Cremona, desires, wishes, and prays that the Ottos, the unconquerable emperors of the Romans, and the most glorious Adelaide, flourish, prosper, and be triumphant. Why it was that you did not receive my former letters or my envoy, the following explanation will make clear. On the day before the Nones of June 4th, we came to Constantinople, and there, as a mark of disrespect to yourselves, being shamefully received, we were harshly and shamefully treated. We were shut up in a palace, large enough indeed, but uncovered, neither keeping out the cold nor warding off the heat. Armed soldiers were made to stand guard, who were to prevent all of my companions from going out and all others from coming in. This dwelling, into which we alone who were shut up could pass, was so far removed from the palace that our breath was taken away when we walked there. We did not ride. To add to our calamity, the Greek wine, on account of being mixed with pitch, resin, and plaster, was to us undrinkable. The house itself was without water, nor could we even for money buy water to still our thirst. To this great torment was added another torment, our warden, namely, who cared for our daily support. If one were to look for his like, not earth, but perhaps hell would furnish it. For he, like an inundating torrent, poured forth on us whatever calamity, whatever plunder, whatever expense, whatever torment, whatever misery he could invent. Nor among 120 days did a single one pass without bringing us groaning and grief. On the day before the Nones of June 4th, as stated above, we arrived at Constantinople before the Carian Gate, and waited with our horses, in no slight rain, until the 11th hour. But at the 11th hour Nicephorus, not regarding us, who had been so distinguished by you as worthy to ride, ordered us to approach, and we were led to the aforesaid, hated, waterless, open marble house. But on the 8th day before the Ides, June 6th, on the Saturday before Pentecost, I was led into the presence of his brother Leo, the marshal of the court and chancellor, and there we wearied ourselves out in a great discussion concerning your imperial title. For he called you not emperor, which is basileus in his tongue, but to insult you, rex, which is king in ours. And when I told him that the thing signified was the same, although the terms used to signify it were different, he said that I had come not to make peace, but to excite discord. And thus angrily rising, he received your letters, truly insultingly, not in his own hand, but through an interpreter. He was a man commanding enough in person, but feigning humility, whereof if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. On the 7th day before the Ides, June 7th, moreover on the sacred day of Pentecost itself, in the palace which is called the Crown Hall, I was led before Nicephorus, a monstrosity of a man, a pygmy, fat-headed, and like a mole as to the smallness of his eyes, disgusting with his short, broad, thick, and half-hoary beard, disgraced by a neck an inch long, very bristly through the length and thickness of his hair, in colour an Ethiopian, one whom it would not be pleasant to meet in the middle of the night, with extensive belly, lean of loin, very long of hip considering his short stature, small of shank, proportionate as to his heels and feet, clad in a garment costly but too old, and foul-smelling and faded through age, shod with Sicyonian shoes, bold of tongue, a fox by nature, in perjury, and lying, a Ulysses. Always, my lords and august emperors, you seemed to me shapely, how much more shapely after this! Always magnificent, how much more magnificent after this! Always powerful, how much more powerful after this! Always gentle, how much more gentle henceforth! Always full of virtues, how much fuller henceforth! At his left, not in a line but far below, sat 2 petty emperors, once his masters, now his subjects. His discourse began as follows. It would have been right for us, nay, we had wished to receive you kindly and with honour, but the impiety of your master does not permit it, since, invading it as an enemy, he has claimed for himself Rome, has taken away from Berengar and Adalbert their kingdom, contrary to law and right, has slain some of the Romans by the sword, others by hanging, depriving some of their eyes, sending others into exile, and has tried, moreover, to subject to himself by slaughter or by flame cities of our empire. And because his wicked endeavour could not take effect, he now has sent you, the instigator and furtherer of this wickedness, to act as a spy upon us while simulating peace. I answered him, My master did not by force or tyrannically invade the city of Rome, but he freed it from a tyrant, nay, from the yoke of tyrants. Did not the slaves of women rule over it, or, which is worse and more disgraceful, harlots themselves? Your power, I fancy, or that of your predecessors, who in name alone are called emperors of the Romans, and are it not in reality, was sleeping at that time. If they were powerful, if emperors of the Romans, why did they permit Rome to be in the hands of harlots? Were not some of them most holy popes banished, others so oppressed that they were not able to have their daily supplies, or the means of giving alms? Did not Adalbert send scornful letters to the emperors Romanus and Constantine, your predecessors? Did he not plunder the churches of the most holy apostles? What one of you emperors, led by zeal for God, took care to avenge so unworthy a crime, and to bring back the Holy Church to its proper conditions? You neglected it. My master did not neglect it. For, rising from the ends of the earth and coming to Rome, he removed the impious, and gave back to the vicars of the holy apostles their power and all their honor. But afterwards those who had risen against him and the Lord Pope, according to the decrees of the Roman emperors Justinian, Valentinian, Theodosius, and the others, he slew, strangled, hung, and sent into exile as violators of their oath, as sacrilegious men, as torturers and plunderers of their lords the popes. Had he not done so, he would have been impious, unjust, cruel, a tyrant. It is well known that Berengar and Adalbert, becoming his vassals, had received the kingdom of Italy with a golden scepter from his hand, and that they, taking an oath, promised fealty in the presence of servants of yours who still live and are at present in this city. And because, at the devil's instigation, they perfidiously violated this promise, he justly deprived them, as deserters and rebels against himself, of their kingdom. You yourself would do the same to those who had been your subjects, and who afterwards rebelled. But Adalbert's vassal, he said, does not acknowledge this. I answered him, if he denies it, one of my suite shall at your command show by a duel tomorrow that it is so. Well, he said, he may, as you say, have done this justly. Explain now why with war and flame he attacked the boundaries of our empire. We were friends, and were expecting, by means of a marriage, to enter into an indissoluble union. The land, I answered, which you say belongs to your empire, belongs, as the nationality and language of the people proves, to the kingdom of Italy. The Lombards held it in their power, and Louis, the emperor of the Lombards, or Franks, freed it from the hand of the Saracens, many of them being cut down. But also Landulf, prince of Benevento and Capua, subjugated and held it in his power for 7 years. Nor would it until now have passed from the yoke of his servitude or that of his successors, had not the emperor Romanus, given an immense sum of money, bought the friendship of our King Hugo, and it was for this reason that he joined in a marriage to his nephew and namesake, the bastard daughter of this same king of ours, Hugo, and, as I see, you ascribe it not to kindness, but to weakness, that, after acquiring Italy and Rome, he left it to you for so many years. The bond of friendship, however, which you did wish, as you say, to form through marriage, we look on as a wile and a snare. You do demand a trace, which the condition of affairs neither compels you to demand nor us to grant. But in order that now all deceit may be laid bare and the truth not be bidden, my master, Otto, has sent me to you, so that if you art willing to give the daughter of the Emperor Romanus and of the Empress Theophano to my master, his son, Otto, the august emperor, you may affirm this to me with an oath, whereupon I will affirm by an oath that, in return for such favours, he will observe and do to you this and this. But already my master has given to you, as to his brother, the best pledge of his friendship in restoring to you, by my intervention, at whose suggestion you declare this evil to have been done, all Apulia, which was subject to his sway, of which thing there are as many witnesses as there are inhabitants in all Apulia. The 2nd hour, said Nicephorus, is already past. The solemn procession to the church is about to take place. Let us now do what the hour demands. At a convenient time we will reply to what you have said." May nothing keep me from describing this procession, and my masters from hearing about it. A numerous multitude of tradesmen and low-born persons collected at this festival to receive and to do honour to Nicephorus, occupied both sides of the road from the palace to St. Sophia like walls, being disfigured by quite thin little shields and wretched spears. And it served to increase this disfigurement that the greater part of this same crowd, in his, Nicephorus's, honour, had marched with bare feet. I believe that they thought in this way better to adorn that holy procession, but also his nobles who passed with him through the plebeian and barefoot multitude were clad in tunics which were too large, and which were torn through too great age. It would have been much more suitable had they marched in their everyday clothes. There was no one whose grandfather had owned one of these garments when it was new. No one there was adorned with gold, no one with gems, save Nicephorus alone, whom the imperial adornments, bought and prepared for the persons of his ancestors, rendered still more disgusting. By your salvation, which is dearer to me than my own, one precious garment of your nobles is worth 100 of these, and more too. I was led to this church procession, and was placed on a raised place next to the singers, and as, like a creeping monster, he proceeded thither, the singers cried out in adulation, "Behold, the morning star approaches, Eos rises. He reflects in his glances the rays of the sun. He, the pale death of the Saracens, Nicephorus, the ruler." And accordingly they sang, "Long life to the ruler Nicephorus! Adore him, you people! Cherish him! Bend the neck to him alone!" How much more truly they might have sung, "Come, you burnt-out coal, you fool, old woman in your walk, wood devil in your look, you peasant, you frequenter of foul places, you goat-foot, you hornhead, you double-limbed one, bristly, unruly, countrified barbarian, harsh, hairy, a rebel, a Cappadocian." And so, inflated by those lying fools, he enters St. Sophia, his masters, the emperors, following him around, his armour-bearer, with an arrow for a pen, from afar, and, with the kiss of peace, adoring him to the places in the church, the era which is in progress from the time when he began to reign, and thus those who did not then exist learn what the era is. On this same day he ordered me to be his guest. Not thinking me worthy, however, to be placed above any of his nobles, I sat in the 15th place from him, and without a tablecloth. Not only did no one of my suite sit at table, but not one of them saw even the house in which I was a guest, during which disgusting and foul meal, which was washed down with oil after the manner of drunkards, and moistened also with a certain and other exceedingly bad fish liquor, he asked me many questions concerning your power, many concerning your dominions and your army. And when I had replied to him consequently and truly, "You lie," he said, "the soldiers of your master do not know bow to ride, nor do they know how to fight on foot. The size of their shields, the weight of their breastplates, the length of their swords, and the burden of their helms permits them to fight in neither one way nor the other." Then he added, smiling, "Their gluttony also impedes them, for their god is their belly, their courage but wind, their bravery drunkenness. Their fasting means dissolution, their sobriety panic. Nor has your master a number of fleets on the sea. I alone have a force of navigators. I will attack him with my ships. I will overrun his maritime cities with war, and those which are near the rivers I will reduce to ashes. And how, I ask, can he even on land resist we with his scanty forces? His son was there, his wife was there, the Saxons, Swabians, Bavarians were all with him, and if they did not know enough and were unable to take one little city that resisted them, how will they resist me when I come, I who am followed by as many troops as Gargara corn-ears have, or grape-shoots the island of Lesbos, stars in the sky are found, or waves in the billowy ocean? When I wished to reply to him, and to give forth an answer worthy of his boasting, he did not permit me, but added, as if to scoff at me, "You are not Romans, but Lombards." When he wished to speak further, and was waving his hand to impose silence upon me, I said in anger, "History teaches that the fratricide Romulus, from whom also the Romans are named, was born in adultery, and that he made an asylum for himself in which he received insolvent debtors, fugitive slaves, homicides, and those who were worthy of death for their deeds, and he called to himself a certain number of such, and called them Romans. From such nobility, those are descended whom you call world rulers, that is, emperors, whom we, namely the Lombards, Saxons, Franks, Lotharingians, Bavarians, Swabians, Burgundians, so despise that, when angry, we can call our enemies nothing more scornful than Roman, comprehending in this one thing, that is in the name of the Romans whatever there is of contemptibility, of timidity, of avarice, of luxury, of lying, in a word, of viciousness. But because you do maintain that we are unwarlike and ignorant of horsemanship, if the sins of the Christians shall merit that you shall remain in this hard-heartedness, the next battle will show what you are, and how warlike we." Nicephorus, exasperated by these words, commanded silence with his hand, and bade that the long narrow table should be taken away, and that I should return to my hated habitation, or, to speak more truly, my prison. There, after 2 days, as a result of vexation, as well as of heat and thirst, I was taken with a severe illness, and, indeed, there was not one of my companions who, having drunk from the same cup of sorrow, did not fear that his last day was approaching. Why should they not sicken, I ask, whose drink instead of the best wine was brine, whose resting-place was not bay, not straw, not even earth, but hard marble, whose pillow was a stone, whose open house kept off neither heat nor showers nor cold, salvation itself, to use a common expression, if it had poured itself out upon them, could not have saved them, weakened therefore by my own tribulations, and those of my companions, calling my warden, or rather my persecutor, I brought it about, not by prayers alone, but through money, that he should carry my letter containing what follows to the brother of Nicephorus, to the choropalate and logothete of the palace Leo, Bishop Liutprand. If the most illustrious emperor thinks of granting the request on account of which I have come, the suffering which I here endure shall not exhaust my patience. Only his lordship must be instructed by my letters, and by an envoy, that I will not remain here without reason. But if the contrary be the case, there is a transport ship of the Venetians here, which is just about to start. Let him permit me, who am ill, to embark, so that, if the time of my dissolution be at hand, my native land may at least receive my corpse." When he had read these lines, he ordered me to come to him after 4 days. There sat with him, according to their tradition, to discuss your affair the wisest men, strong in Attic eloquence, Basilius, the chief chamberlain, the chief state secretary, the chief master of the wardrobe, and 2 other officials. They began their discourse as follows. "Tell us, brother, why you have taken the trouble to come hither." When I had told them that it was on account of the marriage, which was to be the ground for a lasting peace, they said, "It is an unheard-of thing that a daughter born in the purple of an emperor, born in the purple, should be joined in marriage with strange nations. But although you seek so high a favour, you shall receive what you wish, if you give what is right. Ravenna, namely, and Rome, with all the adjoining places, which extend from thence to our possessions. But if you desire friendship without the marriage, let your master permit Rome to be free. But the princes of Capua, namely, and Benevento, who were formerly slaves of our empire, and now are rebels, let him give over to their former subjection." I answered them, "You yourselves cannot but know that my master rules over Slavonian princes, who are mightier than Peter, king of the Bulgarians, who has wedded the daughter of the emperor Christophorus. But Christophorus, they said, was not born in the purple." "But Rome," I said, "which, as you exclaim, you wish to have free, who does it serve? To whom does it pay tribute? Did it not formerly serve harlots? And, while you were sleeping, nay, powerless, did not my master, the august emperor, free it from so disgraceful a servitude? Constantine, the august emperor who founded this city and called it after his name, as world ruler gave many gifts to the Holy Apostolic Roman Church, not only in Italy, but in almost all the western kingdoms, also in the eastern and southern, in Greece, namely, Judea, Persia, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, Egypt, Libya, as his own privileges witness, which are preserved in our land. Now, whatever there is, in Italy, and also in Saxony and Bavaria, or in any of the dominions of my master, that belongs to the Church of the Blessed Apostles, he has conferred it on the vicar of those same most holy apostles. And may I deny God if my master has retained from all of these a city, an estate, a vassal, or a serf. But why does your emperor not do the same? Why does he not restore to the Church of the Apostles what lies in his kingdom, so that he may make it, rich and free as it is by the labor and munificence of my master, still richer and more free?" "But this," said the first chamberlain Basilius, "he will do as soon as Rome and the Roman Church shall be subordinated to his will." "A certain man," I said, "having suffered much injury from another, approached God with these words, 'I, Lord, avenge me upon my adversary.' To whom the Lord said, 'I will do it at the day when I shall render unto each man according to his works.' Alas," said he, "how late that will be." At which all except the emperor's brother shook with laughter. They then ended the interview, and ordered me to be led back to my hated abode, and to be guarded with great care until the day, honored by all religious persons, of the holy apostles. On this festal occasion the emperor commanded me. I was very ill at the time, and also the Bulgarian envoys, who had arrived the day before, to meet him at the church of the holy apostles. And when, after the garrulous songs of praise to Nicephorus, and the celebration of the Mass, we were invited to table, he placed above me, on our side of the table, which was long and narrow, the envoy of the Bulgarians, who was shorn in Hungarian fashion, girt with a brazen chain, and, as it seemed to me, a catechumen, plainly in scorn of yourselves, my august masters. On your behalf I was despised, rejected, and scorned. But I thank the Lord Jesus Christ, whom you serve with your whole soul, that I have been considered worthy to suffer contumely for your sakes. However, my masters, not considering myself but yourselves to be insulted, I left the table. And as I was about indignantly to go away, Leo, the marshal of the court and brother of the emperor, and Simeon, the chief state secretary, came up to me from behind, barking out at me this: "When Peter, the king of the Bulgarians, married the daughter of Nicephorus, articles were mutually drawn up and confirmed with an oath to the effect that with us the envoys of the Bulgarians should be preferred, honored, and cherished above the envoys of all other nations. That envoy of the Bulgarians, although, as you say, and as is true, he is shorn, unwashed, and girt with a brazen chain, is nevertheless a patrician, and we decree and judge that it would not be right to give a bishop, especially a Frankish one, the preference over him. And since we know that you do consider this unseemly, we will not now, as you do expect, allow you to return to your quarters, but shall oblige you to take food in a separate apartment with the servants of the emperor." On account of the incomparable grief in my heart, I made no reply to them, but did what they had ordered, judging that table not a suitable place where, I will not say to me, that is, the Bishop Liutprand, but to your envoy. An envoy of the Bulgarians is preferred. But the sacred emperor soothed my grief through a great gift, sending to me from among his most delicate dishes a fat goat, of which he himself had partaken, deliciously stuffed with garlic, onions, and leeks, steeped in fish sauce, a dish which I could have wished just then to be upon your table, so that you, who do not believe the delicacies of the sacred emperor to be desirable, should at length become believers at this sight.